The air in Crestwood Academy smelled like money. Not the crisp, tangible scent of cash, but the kind of wealth that lingered in polished marble floors, freshly painted walls, and the faint hum of air conditioning that never faltered. For 16-year-old Isaiah Carter, stepping through the arched entrance of the private school felt like walking into a museum, beautiful, cold, and not meant for someone like him. His sneakers squeaked faintly against the floor, a sound that seemed to echo louder than it should in the cavernous hallway. He adjusted the straps of his worn backpack, the only thing he'd brought from his old life in Oakland, and kept his head up. His mom had told him to do that. Keep your head up, Isaiah, no matter what. Crestwood wasn't just a school, it was a fortress of privilege nestled in the rolling hills of Northern California. Isaiah's family hadn't chosen this place out of ambition. His mom's new job as a nurse at the nearby hospital came with a relocation package, and part of that package was a scholarship for Isaiah to attend Crestwood. A chance to get ahead, she'd called it, her voice bright with hope. His dad, a mechanic with hands rougher than sandpaper, had been quieter about it. Just don't let them change you, son, he'd said, clapping Isaiah on the shoulder the night before the move. Isaiah wasn't sure what that meant yet, but he felt the weight of it now, standing in a hallway lined with lockers that gleamed like they'd never been touched. He wasn't small, 5 feet 11 inches with a wiry frame honed by years of discipline, but he didn't carry himself like the kids here. They moved in packs, their laughter sharp and confident, their clothes pressed and expensive. Isaiah's faded hoodie and jeans marked him as different before he even opened his mouth. He'd noticed the looks already, quick, darting glances from students who didn't linger long enough to be caught staring. It wasn't hostility, not yet, but curiosity mixed with something else. Judgment, maybe. He'd seen it before, back in Oakland, when he'd walk into a store and the clerk would follow him with their eyes. Here, though, it felt sharper, like they were sizing him up for a game he didn't know the rules to. The first bell hadn't rung yet, so Isaiah made his way to the office to pick up his schedule. The receptionist, a woman with a tight bun and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, handed him a crisp sheet of paper. "Welcome to Crestwood, Mr. Carter," she said, her tone clipped. "We expect great things from our students." Isaiah nodded, murmuring a quiet, "thank you," and turned to leave. That's when he saw them. They were lounging near a row of lockers, a trio of boys who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog. The leader, tall, with dark hair swept back and a jawline that screamed confidence, leaned against the wall, one foot propped up casually. His name was Ethan Warwick, Isaiah would learn later, a junior with a reputation as the school's golden boy, lacrosse star, debate team captain, and heir to a tech fortune. Flanking him were 2 others, a stocky kid with a buzz cut named Jake, and a lanky one with glasses called Miles. They were laughing about something, their voices carrying just enough to draw attention. Ethan's eyes flicked to Isaiah as he passed, and the laughter paused. Not stopped, just paused, like a predator catching a scent. "New guy," Ethan said, loud enough for Isaiah to hear but soft enough to pretend it wasn't meant for him. Jake smirked, nudging Miles, who adjusted his glasses and muttered something back. Isaiah kept walking, his step steady, his face blank. He'd dealt with worse than whispers. Back in Oakland, he'd trained under Master Chen, a wiry old man who ran a martial arts dojo in a strip mall. Chen had taught him more than just kicks and punches: control, focus, patience. The strongest fighter doesn't need to prove it, Chen used to say, his voice gravelly but firm. Isaiah lived by that. He didn't need to turn around and glare. He didn't need to say a word. Not yet. His first class was AP Calculus, a room full of kids who looked like they'd been solving equations since birth. Isaiah slid into a seat near the back, pulling out a notebook that was already half filled with sketches and notes from his old school. The teacher, a balding man with a nasal voice, started the lesson without acknowledging him. That was fine. Isaiah liked being invisible when he could manage it. But invisibility didn't last long. Halfway through the period, the door swung open, and Ethan strolled in, late and unbothered. He flashed a grin at the teacher. "Sorry, Mr. Pierce." Team meeting ran over, and sauntered to a seat 2 rows ahead of Isaiah. The room seemed to shift around him, a ripple of attention following his every move. Ethan dropped his bag with a thud and leaned back, stretching his arms like he owned the place. Then he turned, just slightly, and caught Isaiah's eye. "You're the scholarship kid, right?" he said, his voice casual but loud enough for the class to hear. A few heads turned. Isaiah met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "Yeah," he said simply. Ethan's smile widened, but it wasn't friendly. "Cool. Hope you can keep up." The comment hung in the air, light but edged with something sharp. "A test, maybe." Isaiah didn't flinch. He just nodded once and went back to his notes. Ethan turned away, but Isaiah could feel the shift, like a line had been drawn, subtle but real. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and sideways glances, but that moment stuck with him. Ethan Warwick wasn't done with him. Guys like that never were. By the end of the week, Isaiah had settled into a routine. He kept to himself, ate lunch alone under a tree in the courtyard, and ignored the whispers that followed him. But Ethan and his crew didn't let up. It started small, watch it, when Jake accidentally bumped him in the hall, a snicker from Miles when Isaiah answered a question in class. Then came the comments. "What's Oakland like, Carter? You dodge bullets to get to school?" Ethan asked one day, leaning against a locker with that same easy grin. The hallway was crowded, and a few kids laughed. Isaiah didn't respond, just adjusted his backpack and kept moving. "Quiet type, huh?" Ethan called after him. "That's cute." Isaiah's hands tightened around the straps, but he didn't turn back. He could hear Master Chen's voice in his head, "Anger is a chain. Break it, and you're free." He wasn't here to fight. He was here to survive, to make his parents proud, to prove he belonged. But Ethan didn't know that. To him, Isaiah was just a target, someone new, someone different, someone who didn't bow. And that was the problem. Friday came, and with it, the first real test. Isaiah was in the gym for PE, a sprawling space with gleaming equipment and a coach who barked orders like a drill sergeant. They were playing dodgeball, a game Isaiah had always excelled at back home. He moved with precision, dodging throws and landing his own with quiet accuracy. Ethan was on the other team, lobbing balls with a force that made the air whistle. When Isaiah caught one of Ethan's throws mid-air, the gym went quiet for a split second. Ethan's grin faltered, then hardened. "Lucky catch," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Isaiah didn't reply, just tossed the ball back into play. After class, as Isaiah headed for the locker room, Ethan stepped in front of him, Jake and Miles at his sides. "You think you're hot stuff, huh?" Ethan said, his tone light but his eyes narrow. Isaiah stopped, meeting his gaze. "I'm just playing the game," he said evenly. Ethan stepped closer, his shadow falling over Isaiah. "This isn't Oakland, Carter. You don't belong here." The words were a shove, even if Ethan's hands stayed at his sides. Isaiah's pulse quickened, but his face stayed calm. "I'm here now," he said, stepping past him. Ethan didn't follow, but Isaiah could feel the weight of his stare. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The weekend gave Isaiah a break from Crestwood's polished halls, but Monday brought him back into the fray. He'd spent Saturday at a park near his new apartment, practicing forms under the watchful eye of a few curious squirrels. The movements, sharp, fluid, deliberate, were his anchor, a piece of Oakland he could carry with him. Master Chen had drilled them into him over years, turning a scrawny kid into something more. "Your body is a weapon," Chen used to say, "but your mind is the trigger." Isaiah didn't want to pull that trigger at Crestwood, but Ethan Warwick seemed determined to force his hand. The week started quietly enough. Isaiah navigated his classes, kept his head down, and avoided the trio when he could. But Ethan's comments grew bolder, his jabs more public. In English, when Isaiah volunteered an answer about to kill a mockingbird, Ethan muttered, "Guess you relate to the help, huh?" loud enough for half the room to hear. The teacher didn't catch it, but the snickers from Jake and Miles did. Isaiah's jaw tightened, but he let it slide. In the cafeteria, Ethan tripped and knocked Isaiah's water bottle to the floor, smirking as it rolled under a table. "Oops," he said, shrugging. Isaiah retrieved it without a word, but the crowd watching felt like a spotlight. By Wednesday, the tension was a live wire. Isaiah could feel it in the air, the way Ethan's crew lingered near him, waiting for a crack to exploit. He didn't give them one. He ate alone, studied alone, walked the halls alone. But solitude didn't shield him. It made him a target. That afternoon, in the courtyard after lunch, it came to a head. Isaiah was sitting on a bench, sketching in his notebook, a habit he'd picked up from his dad, who doodled car designs in his spare time. The courtyard was busy, kids sprawled on the grass or clustered in groups. Ethan approached with Jake and Miles, their shadows falling over Isaiah's page. "What's that, Carter? Drawing your old hood?" Ethan said, plucking the notebook from Isaiah's hands before he could react. Isaiah stood, his movements slow but deliberate. "Give it back," he said, his voice low. Ethan flipped through the pages, holding it out of reach. "Look at this, cars, huh? You a mechanic's kid or something?" Jake laughed, and Miles chimed in, "Bet he can't even afford one." A small crowd started to gather, drawn by the noise. Isaiah's hands flexed at his sides, but he kept his breathing steady. "I said give it back," he repeated, stepping closer. Ethan dangled the notebook higher, grinning. "Make me." For a moment, Isaiah considered it. One move, a quick grab, a twist, and Ethan would be on the ground, the notebook back in his hands. He could see it in his mind, every step precise. But Master Chen's voice cut through, "Fighting for pride is a loss before you begin." Isaiah exhaled, stepping back. "Keep it then," he said, turning away. Ethan laughed, tossing the notebook into a nearby trash can. "That's what I thought," he called after him. The crowd dispersed, but the sting stayed. Isaiah retrieved the notebook later, brushing off the dirt. The sketches were intact, but the humiliation wasn't. He didn't tell his parents. His mom would worry, and his dad would tell him to tough it out. Instead, he went to the park that night and trained until his muscles ached, the anger bleeding out with every strike. He wasn't weak. He wasn't scared. But he was tired, tired of proving he belonged, tired of being the outsider. Friday brought the breaking point. It was the last period, a school-wide assembly in the auditorium. Isaiah sat near the back, half listening to the principal drone on about upcoming events. Ethan, Jake, and Miles were a few rows ahead, their heads bent together, whispering. When the assembly ended, the crowd funneled into the halls, a chaotic press of bodies. Isaiah was halfway to the exit when he felt a shove, hard, deliberate, sending him into a locker. He caught himself, turning to see Ethan standing there, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. Jake and Miles flanked him, grinning like hyenas. "Watch where you're going, Carter," Ethan said, his voice carrying over the noise. A few kids slowed, watching. Isaiah straightened, his bag slipping off one shoulder. "You pushed me," he said, calm but firm. Ethan stepped closer, his height giving him an edge. "What if I did? You gonna cry about it?" The hall quieted, eyes turning their way. Isaiah's pulse thrummed, but his face stayed still. "Back off," he said, a warning in his tone. Ethan laughed, shoving him again, harder this time. "Or what?" The "or what" hung there, a challenge. Isaiah's training kicked in, not the moves, but the control. He could walk away. He should walk away. But Ethan's hand came up again, aiming for a third shove, and something snapped. Not anger, clarity. Isaiah moved. It was fast, too fast for most to catch. His left hand caught Ethan's wrist mid-motion, twisting it just enough to throw him off balance. His right foot slid forward, hooking Ethan's ankle, and with a slight pull, Ethan stumbled, crashing into Jake. The hall gasped, a collective intake of breath. Ethan caught himself against the lockers, eyes wide, more shocked than hurt. Isaiah stepped back, hands at his sides, his expression unchanged. I said back off, he repeated, then turned and walked away. The whispers started before he reached the door. Did you see that? He didn't even hit him. Who is that guy? Ethan stayed where he was, red-faced, glaring after Isaiah. The crowd parted as Isaiah left, their stares a mix of awe and confusion. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back now. Word spread like wildfire through Crestwood Academy. By Monday, Isaiah Carter wasn't just the new kid anymore, he was the guy who'd taken down Ethan Warwick without throwing a punch. The story grew in the telling. Some said he'd flipped Ethan over his shoulder, others claimed he'd dodged a swing like a ninja. The truth was simpler, cleaner, but no less stunning. Isaiah had moved with a precision that left no room for doubt. He wasn't just some scholarship kid from Oakland. He was something else. He felt the shift immediately. In the halls, kids who'd ignored him now nodded or stepped aside. In class, teachers called on him more, their tones a mix of curiosity and respect. Even the whispers changed, less mocking, more wondering. But Isaiah didn't bask in it. He didn't want the attention. He wanted to be left alone, to get through the year and prove he could handle this place. Ethan, though, had other plans. The lacrosse star didn't take humiliation lightly. By Tuesday, he'd regrouped, his crew tighter around him than ever. They didn't confront Isaiah directly, not yet, but the jabs kept coming, sharper now, laced with venom. Think you're a badass, Carter? Jake muttered in gym, slamming a dodgeball past him. Lucky move, Miles sneered in the cafeteria, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Ethan stayed quieter, but his stares were knives, cutting across rooms and hallways. Isaiah ignored it all, his focus a shield. He trained harder at the park, his forms a meditation, his mind a fortress. Wednesday brought a new twist. During lunch, a girl approached him, Lila Nguyen, a junior with sharp eyes and a reputation for running the school newspaper. She slid onto the bench across from him, a notebook in hand. Isaiah, right? She said, not waiting for a reply. I heard what happened. Mind if I ask you about it? Isaiah paused, his sandwich halfway to his mouth. Not much to say, he replied, wary. Lila smiled, undeterred. Come on. New kid takes down Ethan Warwick with one move? That's a story. People want to know who you are. Isaiah studied her. She didn't seem like the others, no judgment, just curiosity. I'm just me, he said finally. I don't like trouble. Lila scribbled something down. Trouble found you, though. What was that move? Karate? Judo? Isaiah hesitated, then said, something like that. She grinned. Mysterious. I like it. Look, I'm running a piece on new students. You're in it, whether you talk or not. Might as well give me the real version. He shrugged. Write what you want. Just don't make me sound like a hero. Lila laughed. Too late for that. Her article hit the school website Thursday night, The Quiet Prodigy, Isaiah Carter's Unexpected Rise. It was short, factual, but it painted him as an enigma, a kid from Oakland with hidden depths. By Friday, the whole school had read it. Some approached him, asking about martial arts or Oakland. Others kept their distance, unsure what to make of him. Ethan, though, saw it as a declaration of war. That afternoon, in the gym parking lot after school, it happened. Isaiah was heading to the bus stop when Ethan and his crew cut him off. Jake cracked his knuckles, Miles shifted nervously, and Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled rage. "You think you're some big shot now, huh?" he said, his voice low. "That article, cute. But you're still nothing here." Isaiah stopped, his bag over one shoulder, his stance relaxed but ready. "I don't want a fight," he said. Ethan smirked. "Too bad." He swung, a fast, hard punch aimed at Isaiah's jaw. Isaiah moved instinctively, sidestepping and catching Ethan's arm under his own, locking it in place. With a twist, he sent Ethan stumbling forward, off balance but not down. Jake lunged next, a wild tackle, and Isaiah pivoted, using Jake's momentum to send him crashing into Miles. The whole thing took seconds, 3 moves, no strikes, just control. Ethan scrambled up, breathing hard, as a small crowd gathered, phones out, recording. "Stay down," Isaiah said, his voice steady. Ethan froze, his fists clenched, but he didn't move. The crowd murmured, a mix of shock and excitement. Isaiah turned and walked away, the weight of their stares heavy on his back. He didn't see Ethan's glare, didn't hear the whispers of "freak" and "coward" from Jake. All he felt was the calm after the storm, the clarity of knowing he'd won without losing himself. The video went viral, at least within Crestwood's walls. By Monday, everyone had seen it, Isaiah Carter dismantling Ethan and his crew in the parking lot, smooth and effortless, like a dancer in a fight. The comments online ranged from "he's a legend" to "Ethan got wrecked." Isaiah didn't check his phone much, but he couldn't escape the buzz. Kids he'd never met gave him fist bumps in the hall. Teachers watched him closer, like they were waiting for something more. Even Lila cornered him again, grinning. "Told you you're a hero," she said. Isaiah just shook his head. "I'm not." Ethan didn't show up Monday. Rumors said he was suspended, someone had sent the video to the principal, or maybe just too embarrassed to face the school. Jake and Miles kept their distance, their bravado gone. The hierarchy at Crestwood shifted, subtle but real. Isaiah wasn't king, but he wasn't prey anymore. He was untouchable, a quiet force no one wanted to test. Tuesday, he found a note in his locker, "Meet me at the track after school." Isaiah stared at it, debating. He didn't trust Ethan, but something told him to go. At 3:30, he walked to the empty track, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. Ethan was there, alone, in sweats instead of his usual polished look. He didn't smirk, didn't posture. "You're good," he said, his voice flat. "Where'd you learn that?" Isaiah shrugged. "Back home. A teacher." Ethan nodded, kicking at the dirt. "I underestimated you. Won't happen again." It wasn't an apology, but it was close. Isaiah didn't push. "We don't have to do this," he said. Ethan met his eyes, a flicker of something, respect, maybe, there. "Yeah. We don't." He walked off, and Isaiah let him go. It wasn't friendship, but it was peace. Weeks passed, and Crestwood settled. Isaiah joined the track team at Lila's nudging, his speed and stamina turning heads. He didn't talk much, but he didn't need to. His actions spoke, on the field, in the halls, in the way he carried himself. His parents noticed the change too. "You're finding your place," his mom said one night, smiling. His dad just nodded, proud. Isaiah wasn't a prodigy in the way people thought, not a superhero or a myth. He was a kid who'd learned to stand tall, to fight without fighting, to win by being himself. And at Crestwood, that was enough.